Some rock formations on Earth look far too perfect to have been created by nature. Giant stone arches stand alone in empty deserts. Rock formations that look like giant sleeping larvae. Some mountains appear split apart as if they were cut open by gigantic machines. But there are places that still leave geologists debating because their shapes look so different from the landscape surrounding them. These are not man-made structures. These are the most surreal rock wonders on Earth, where impossible-looking formations exist that science still cannot fully explain. Arches National Park is known as the world capital of stone arches, with more than 2,000 sandstone gateways rising across the dry desert of Utah. This entire rock system formed above an underground salt layer that keeps shifting, causing the sandstone above to crack, bend, and separate over time. Even the black soil beneath the rocks is a living, biological crust, so fragile that one footprint may take up to 50 years to recover. Balanced rock is a large stone mass weighing as much as 3 buses, standing in balance on a narrow base in the open desert. Landscape arch stretches longer than a standard soccer field, but its middle section has been eroded into a very thin band of rock suspended in the air. Delicate Arch stands out with its isolated shape near a cliff edge and was chosen by Utah as a symbol printed on millions of license plates. The Menpapuna rock formations stand on a remote plateau with 7 monolithic stone pillars rising separately above the forest and ancient rock terrain. Although as tall as a 14-story building, many of the pillars have unusually narrow bases while maintaining a natural state of balance. Geologists believe these are hard rock cores left behind after the softer surrounding mountain layers were eroded by wind, ice, and rain over roughly 200 million years. Depending on the angle of light and the viewing position, the rocks can appear similar to human heads or animal forms, which connects them to many indigenous legends. The area has no direct road access, so reaching it usually requires a helicopter or a multi-day hike through wilderness. In winter, snow and ice cover the pillars, making the entire formation stand out more clearly against the dark and cold plateau. Mount Dangxia is known as one of the strangest red rock museums on Earth because it contains two natural formations with clear male and female fertility shapes. Yangyuan stone is a sandstone pillar about 92 feet tall, rising straight into the sky with natural grooves that make its form unusually distinctive. Not far away, Yinyuan stone is hidden inside dense forest and appears as a rock fissure more than 33 feet high with unusual color and symmetry. These two formations were not carved by humans, but shaped by wind, rain, erosion, and geological fractures over tens of millions of years. Because they are made of red sandstone, their surfaces can shift from orange-pink under strong sunlight to deep red when fog or sunset appears. Linked to local beliefs about yin-yang and fertility, the site attracts many couples who come to pray for children. Skull Rock is considered one of the most realistic natural skull-shaped rocks in the world, recognized for the two large openings that closely resemble human eye sockets in the Joshua Tree Desert. These rock cavities were not carved by humans, but formed as rainwater, collected inside cracks within the granite and slowly eroded the stone over thousands of years. The granite formation sits directly beside the paved road and stands apart from the millions of rounded rocks surrounding it, making it easy to identify from a distance. The rock surface constantly sheds thin layers of sand-sized particles under strong desert winds and extreme temperature changes between day and night. Its unusual appearance and easy access have made it one of the most photographed stops in all of Joshua Tree National Park. Zhangjiajie is known as the Kingdom of Floating Mountains, with more than 3,000 sandstone pillars rising vertically across the deep valleys of Hunan Province. Many pillars reach nearly 980 feet, equal to an 80-story building, while remaining stable, despite having bases narrower than their upper sections. When fog covers the valley floor, the pillar tops appear as separate stone masses suspended in the air. This region was once beneath the ocean, about 380 million years ago, then rose and was eroded by water and wind into pillar forms. Tianmen Mountain has a natural rock arch at about 4,900 feet above sea level, large enough for jet aircraft to pass through. It is China's first national forest park, marking the beginning of large-scale conservation for natural landscapes in the country. Al-Nasla rock draws attention because a nearly perfect vertical split divides the stone into two halves in the Arabian desert. The rock stands nearly 20 feet tall and has such a smooth surface that many people compare it to an artificial cut rather than a natural fracture. According to geologists, Al-Nasla may have formed through weathering and fractures in granite as desert temperatures changed sharply between day and night. Repeated expansion and contraction over a long period could create a straight split, later polished by wind and sand over thousands of years. Another hypothesis suggests that it was an ancient fault line gradually eroded away, while one face of the rock still preserves carvings believed to belong to the Temutic people from more than 3,000 years ago. Welcome to Tsingy de Bemaraha, a strange stone forest where the ground becomes millions of rock blades in Madagascar. True to its name, meaning the place where people cannot walk barefoot, its sharp limestone can tear through thick hiking boots. This rocky maze was once a coral reef about 200 million years ago, later lifted by tectonic forces and carved by rain and wind into dense spikes. Because the terrain is extremely difficult, many areas remain blind spots that modern humans have not fully explored. In contrast to this dangerous landscape, white sifaka lemurs still leap across the stone blades with bare feet thanks to special fleshy pads. For adventurous visitors, the suspension bridge hanging above the sharp stone abyss is the most famous challenge here. Welcome to the Stone Apple, a 120-million-year-old rock formation marked by a perfect crack that looks like a giant sword slicing through the ocean. Local legends claim the mysterious split was created during a battle between two ancient gods who struck the stone apart to decide victory and defeat. In reality, geologists believe a small amount of Ice Age water entered a crack, froze, expanded, and slowly split the granite apart despite its steel-like hardness. Even with a weight of thousands of tons, the two halves remain balanced on a narrow rock base for millions of years without collapsing under the force of the waves. Depending on the viewing angle, the formation can suddenly resemble either a gigantic apple or a massive mouth opening across the sea. Visitors can now kayak directly through the narrow gap inside the rock and experience the feeling of passing through a hidden gateway in the middle of the ocean. The Mount Fanjing Golden Temple is known as the most dangerous and spectacular cloud temple on the planet. The temple sanctuary rests on the Red Cloud's golden summit, a natural stone spire protruding straight into the sky to a height of about 7,664 feet, equivalent to a massive 770-story building. The two temples are connected to each other by a tiny stone bridge stretched across a narrow fissure at a dizzying height, looking as if it is floating amidst the clouds. To touch the Golden Temple, visitors have no other choice but to hike up about 8,000 steep stone steps. At the most treacherous sections, climbers must cling tightly to iron chains anchored directly into the cliff. This mountain is covered by thick fog and clouds for over 200 days a year, making the stone steps extremely slippery and the slightest mistake during the climb a significant risk. Mount Sanking is considered the world's largest outdoor stone sculpture museum, where thousands of strange granite pillars cover the mountain range above the sea of clouds. The name Sanking comes from three high peaks standing side by side, linked to the image of the three supreme deities in Taoism. The stone landscape here formed through long periods of tectonic uplift, fracturing, and erosion, gradually separating the granite into pillars, peaks, and natural rock sculptures. Within this system, Python rising from the mountain stands 420 feet tall, rising vertically from the mist-filled valley. Nearby, Goddess of Spring has a distinctive tilted angle that clearly resembles the face, nose bridge, and flowing hair of a young woman looking down toward the mountains. At sunset, the light dyes the entire sea of clouds and mist a vivid orange-pink, creating a magnificent glow that sweeps across the granite peaks. Mexican Hat Rock is one of the strangest balanced rocks in America, creating the impression of a giant sandstone hat that could collapse after a single strong desert wind. The extreme ratio between the narrow stone base and the massive sandstone block above creates a powerful visual illusion that makes many people believe the structure should not remain standing. In reality, the rock has survived for millions of years because the harder sandstone layer on top resists erosion far better than the softer red rock below. This uneven erosion gradually shrinks the lower section, while the upper layer continues extending outward like the brim of a giant hat suspended in the air. Despite looking fragile, the structure is solid enough for experienced climbers to rappel down and stand directly on the outer edge for photographs. Geologists believe the narrow neck is still eroding every day, and the entire formation will eventually collapse in the future. Sigiriya is known as the eighth wonder of the world, where a red rock about 656 feet tall carries an ancient palace on top above the Sri Lankan plain. This rock rises alone from flat ground, creating such an unusual shape that local legends have often linked it to extraterrestrial ideas. At the base of the cliff, a hydraulic fountain system, more than 1,500 years old, can still operate during the rainy season through natural water pressure. Along the exposed climb, the mirror wall was once polished with egg white and beeswax until it could reflect people passing beside it. To reach the nearly vertical summit, ancient visitors had to pass through the Lion Gate, where two giant stone claws still remain. And to this day, The greatest unanswered mystery is still how people in the 5th century moved massive amounts of brick and stone to this height without modern machines. Shiprock is the frozen throat of a 30-million-year-old supervolcano, rising from the flat desert like a lonely stone tower in North America. The dark rock stands nearly 1,600 feet tall, equal to a 200-story building, creating a sharp, visual contrast with the empty desert around it. From its base, thin and sharp rock walls stretch for miles across the sand, resembling the back fins of a buried earth dragon. Its jagged shape led the Navajo people to believe it was the fossilized body of a giant mythical bird that once carried their ancestors across the desert. By day, the rock looks dark gray, like a ruined shipwreck, but at sunset, it turns orange-red, as if it were burning. Since 1970, climbing Shiprock has been completely banned because it is a sacred site of the Navajo people. Known as Iceland's strangest stone beast, Vitsakur is a rare natural rock formation reinforced with concrete foundations beneath the sea to prevent North Atlantic waves from collapsing it. Its name means white shirt, but the white layer on top actually comes from seabird droppings accumulated over many years. This 50-foot-tall rock is the hardened core left from an ancient volcano after the softer surrounding layers were eroded away. Sea waves continued carving two large openings beneath the rock, shaping it like a giant rhinoceros, lowering its head to drink. Icelandic legend says it was once a troll that wandered too long at night and was turned to stone by sunlight. When the tide retreats, the wet black sand below reflects the entire stone beast like a natural mirror. Perched high in the mountains of Thailand, Three Whale Rock creates the illusion of three giant whales swimming through a sea of clouds, instead of resting in the ocean itself. What makes the formation even stranger is that these massive rocks stand on a jungle-covered mountaintop with no connection to the sea or any coastal environment. These ancient sandstone formations are around 75 million years old, dating back to the age when dinosaurs still walked across the Earth. Over tens of millions of years, seasonal rain and strong winds slowly eroded the softer rock layers, accidentally shaping three long, curved formations aligned almost perfectly like a giant whale family. Visitors are only allowed to walk across the backs of the father whale and mother whale because the baby whale section is too narrow and dangerously steep for climbing. From a nearly unknown viewpoint, the site has rapidly become the most famous check-in destination in Bangka province. Fairy chimneys are the largest and strangest volcanic mushroom rock complex on the planet, where people can live inside the belly of gigantic natural stone pillars. This landscape is unusual because many pillars have softer lower bodies but carry large, hard, flat stones balanced on top like natural hats. The volcanic rock here is soft enough for ancient people to carve into homes, tunnels, and churches, then slowly hardens after long exposure to dry air. The mineral composition inside the rock makes the whole valley change color with sunlight, shifting from pale pink to golden yellow and orange red. Their strange shapes once led ancient people to call them the chimneys of fairies. At sunrise, Cappadocia's sky fills with hot air balloons, creating the most distinctive experience when looking down over the stone valleys. Yehleu Geopark holds a record as one of the strangest coastal mushroom rock fields in the world, where pale yellow rock formations stretch across the shoreline like the surface of a dry planet beside the ocean. Beneath the surface, geological fault activity combined with seawater erosion cut the sedimentary rock into square-shaped formations resembling giant blocks of tofu. In higher areas, harder rock cores remained between the erosion channels, forming rounded stone pillars that resemble giant candles melting above the sea. Ocean waves and coastal winds continue eroding the rocks every day, creating unusual shapes such as sandals, honeycomb patterns, and other strange formations. The most famous formation in the entire park is the Queen's Head Rock, with its thin stone neck leaning toward the sea in a position that appears physically unstable. The entire geological landscape continues to erode naturally year after year, and many of its stone formations are gradually disappearing from the coastline. What makes Kuka Hongshan Stone Forest look more like an alien landing site than a natural wonder in the Chinese desert? The reason lies in thousands of dense red rock pillars with repeated shapes, creating a landscape that appears too regular and too unusual for normal desert terrain. Many rocks weighing several tons stand on narrow bases, but they still maintain a natural state of balance through millions of years of weathering. The rock surface appears sharp, but its inner structure is mostly soft compressed sand that can be scraped apart with a fingernail. At sunset, many areas shift from orange-brown to bright red because of the angle of light on the rock layers. This area was once little known and was recorded after a local shepherd discovered it in 1999 while searching for lost livestock. Walking into Goblin Valley feels like stepping onto a science fiction planet where thousands of strange stone shadows stretch across the dry red ground. Hidden deep within the remote deserts of Utah, this valley is covered with thousands of mushroom-shaped rock formations of different sizes, resembling a group of stone creatures standing motionless under the sun. Geologists identify these formations as part of the Entrada sandstone layer, deposited more than 170 million years ago when the region was still a shallow sea and coastal plain. Over millions of years, wind, rainfall, and chemical erosion wore down the softer rock below, leaving harder caps balanced on top like stone helmets. As the light changes, the rocks create illusions that resemble eyes, noses, mouths, and different expressions from hour to hour. This is one of the few stone parks where visitors can freely walk among the formations without being limited to fixed trails. Moeraki boulders is one of the most complete spherical rock groups on Earth, with dozens of round stones weighing up to 7 tons scattered across Kwekohe Beach like giant fossilized eggs. According to Maori legend, these stones are the remains of baskets and objects washed ashore after an ancient canoe wreck at sea. Scientifically, they are continuously exposed from the coastal cliffs as waves erode the surrounding mudstone and cause each boulder to fall onto the sand. Each sphere formed over about 5.5 million years as minerals gathered around a small core beneath an ancient sea floor. The surface of many boulders has deep cracks similar to a turtle shell, sometimes revealing hollow centers with yellow mineral crystals inside. Under the effects of sea salt, strong waves, and coastal weather, the stones still remain as geological traces from the age of the last dinosaurs. If there were a title for the most reckless rock in the world, Hyaktiyo Golden Rock in Myanmar would likely hold it with its impossible sliding position. The rock weighs about 660 US tons and extends beyond the edge of a cliff around 3,600 feet deep, yet it still does not fall from the mountaintop. Its base is not fused to the cliff, but rests on a very small contact area, so narrow that light can pass through the gap underneath. What makes the site even more unusual is that the rock has remained stable after many powerful earthquakes recorded in Myanmar. Local belief says this balance comes from a strand of the Buddha's hair, kept inside the small pagoda on top of the rock. After about 2,500 years, the head-shaped granite boulder has been covered with many layers of gold leaf, forming a bright golden mass among the mountain clouds. Bisti Badlands is known as the largest natural alien sculpture garden in North America, where grey stone valleys spread out like a copy of Mars. This dry and nearly lifeless land was once a tropical swamp inhabited by dinosaurs around 70 million years ago, After the ancient environment changed, wind, water, and erosion continuously wore down the soft rock, leaving thousands of clay pillars, mushroom stones, and petrified tree trunks scattered across the ground. Deep in the valley stands Alien Throne, a natural rock structure hollowed and curved like a large throne in the empty desert. The Cracked Eggs area contains many smooth, round stones split open at the top like giant eggs left behind in a dead landscape. Many multi-ton rocks still balance on thin clay columns for thousands of years, creating the constant feeling that the entire formation could collapse at any moment. Forget the split rock of Al Nasla, because Tassili en Agir is the giant stone forest hiding ancient traces that still draw scientific attention. Over millions of years, wind and sand eroded the sandstone into tens of thousands of mushroom-shaped pillars, creating a vast stone city across the hot, dry desert. The steep rock walls of this maze preserved paintings about 10,000 years old, including strange human figures with heads resembling helmets or antennas. With more than 15,000 drawings and engravings, the site records hunting, herding, and daily life of ancient communities across different layers of time. Images of crocodiles and hippos on the rocks show that this arid land once had a wetter climate, enough to support rivers, lakes, and freshwater life. In contrast to the wild stone landscape, twisted desert cypress trees here still grip the cracked rock gaps and have survived for more than 2,000 years. Trolltunga is known as Norway's Devil's Tongue, where a massive rock ledge hangs above a drop of about 2,300 feet without any support beneath it. This rock mass, weighing thousands of tons, juts straight out from a rough cliff and forms a flat, narrow, elongated stone platform in open air. Its unusual shape is a remnant of the Ice Age about 10,000 years ago, when glacial erosion cut into the mountainside and left a solid rock core extending outward. Norwegian authorities have not built permanent guardrails around the ledge, so the original sense of exposure and danger remains almost intact. To stand on Trolltunga for only a few seconds, visitors get no vehicle or cable car support and must hike about 17 miles through steep mountain terrain for nearly 12 hours. The White Desert is the only place on Earth where snowstorms seem to blow through a desert heated to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, because the snow here is actually made of stone. Located in Egypt's Farafra region, this landscape is made of pale limestone formations left behind by an ancient sea rich in marine sediments. When the sea retreated and the climate became dry, wind and sand began wearing down the soft rock, creating mushroom-shaped stones, sharp pillars, and layered spiral forms. Some rocks weighing dozens of tons still balance on small bases, making the whole desert look like a giant natural sculpture field. The white chalk rock complex acts like a chameleon, constantly shifting colors from yellow and orange to peach and deep purple under the sunset. Many visitors choose to camp overnight among the stone formations, where moonlight makes the landscape resemble a strange surface beyond Earth. Geological looks like a stone deliberately trapped in mid-air, wedged above an abyss about 3,281 feet deep instead of falling to the mountain floor. This boulder was actually carried by an ancient glacier and locked into a V-shaped crack around 10,000 years ago. The close fit between the rock and the two cliff walls creates enough horizontal pressure to keep it stable even after many people have stepped onto its surface. This is one of the rare adventure sites where visitors can stand on a rock above open space without fences or safety ropes. When thick fog hides the fjord below, the stone surface creates the feeling of placing 1 foot over a bottomless void. Even after completing a mountain hike of about 7 miles, many visitors still wait for hours to get only a few seconds of photos on Geological. With nearly 2,000 giant rock mountains rising straight from the seabed, welcome to the strangest rock labyrinth on the planet. Stretching across northeastern Vietnam, this landscape formed through more than 280 million years of tectonic movement and constant erosion from rain, wind, and seawater. Over immense geological time, the limestone was carved into steep cliffs, deep caves, and hidden lagoons sealed inside the rocky islands. Among the countless islands, Trong Mai Islet stands out with two large rocks, balanced on extremely narrow bases, appearing ready to collapse despite surviving millions of years of storms and waves. Even though the rock surfaces are sharp and nearly soil-free, forest plants continue forcing their roots through narrow cracks to cover the islands in green vegetation. When you have the chance to travel by boat through the morning mist across the bay, you will understand why UNESCO recognized this place as a World Natural Heritage Site. Giant's Causeway is one of the strangest geometric rock fields on Earth, with about 40,000 polygonal basalt columns packed together beside the Atlantic Ocean. Tens of thousands of columns here have nearly complete polygonal sections and fit so tightly that the gaps between each rock block are very small. The rock field extends toward the sea in the form of natural steps and is connected to the legend of a stone bridge linking Ireland with Scotland. On the nearby cliff, 60 basalt columns reaching about 39 feet stand close together, forming a shape similar to the large pipes of a church organ. This structure, formed when volcanic lava cooled quickly, contracted, and cracked into polygonal blocks about 60 million years ago. Unlike many strictly fenced World Heritage Sites, visitors can walk across the columns, climb the basalt levels, and directly observe the tightly interlocking structure of this coastline. Fly Geyser is considered one of the world's most stubborn geysers because it has boiled and sprayed hot mineral water for more than 60 years with almost no pause. This strange structure was not formed entirely by nature, but appeared after a failed geothermal well drilling attempt in Nevada in 1964. From the abandoned drill hole, mineral-rich underground pressure broke through the ground and created 3 clustered stone towers that constantly release steam in the desert. The hot water continues depositing minerals layer by layer, making the formation look like a living structure slowly growing over time. The red, green, and orange colors on its surface come from heat-loving bacteria growing in the hot, mineral-rich water. The site is now managed by the Burning Man organization, and only a limited number of pre-booked tours are allowed to approach it closely.
High above the deep Lysefjord in Norway, Kjeragbolten sits wedged between two cliffs like an unbelievable mistake of nature. It is a boulder of about 176 cubic feet, suspended nearly 3,280 feet above the fjord below. It is believed to be a glacial deposit left after the last ice age, then locked tightly inside the mountain crack for thousands of years. Its narrow position between the rock walls keeps it in place, even as strong winds, vertical cliffs, and open air surround it. For visitors, the scariest part is not the hike, but the moment they step onto a stone barely wide enough to stand on. Would you dare take a photo here? Or would one look down at Lysfjord be enough to make your legs shake? In the state of Utah, a massive rock balances on such a small base that many first-time visitors can hardly believe what they are seeing. Mexican hat rock resembles a wide-brimmed hat, formed over millions of years as softer rock layers eroded faster than the hard sandstone above them. This difference in erosion resistance created a formation that looks incredibly fragile while remaining stable for a very long time. From a distance, the rock appears to float above the desert, creating one of the most unusual geological sites in Utah. Although erosion continues to shape the formation, no one knows exactly when this remarkable balance will finally come to an end. Eternal Flame Falls is one of the few places in the world where a natural flame burns just behind a flowing waterfall. What makes it remarkable is that the gas feeding the flame comes from shallow, relatively cool rock instead of the high temperature conditions that normally create natural gas deposits. The gas here is different from many other natural gas sources because it contains more highly flammable material, helping the flame burn brightly inside the small rock cavity behind the waterfall. Even as water pours down in front of it, the flame can continue burning inside its small rock cavity as long as the gas keeps flowing. If the flame is blown out by wind or water, hikers and visitors often relight it so this remarkable natural wonder can keep burning. What if there were a lake that seemed able to turn every creature that touched it into stone? In northern Tanzania, Lake Natron appears with a strange red colour created by microorganisms that survive in its salty, highly alkaline water. The lake's alkalinity is extremely high, sometimes reaching a pH similar to ammonia based cleaning products, so it can cause serious burns or irritation to animals that are not adapted to it. When birds or bats die near the lake, salt and minerals can cover their bodies, drying them until they look like forgotten stone statues. Yet this harsh water also forms a natural barrier for about 2.5 million lesser flamingos that nest on the salt islands across the lake. In the ancient town of Mahabalipuram, Krishna's butterball is a massive rock, weighing about 250 tons, resting on a slope of nearly 45 degrees while remaining still for more than 1,200 years. The rock stands about 20 feet high and amazes visitors because the area touching the ground looks extremely small compared with the huge mass above it. Even so, it does not break the laws of gravity, but exists in a natural state of balance that makes people feel as if it could roll down at any moment. In 19008, local accounts say the Madras authorities used 7 elephants to try to move the yak out of safety concerns, but it did not move. To local people, it is the butterball of Lord Krishna, While for visitors standing below it, the rock remains a stone paradox that forces everyone to look up. At Racetrack Playa in Death Valley, rocks weighing hundreds of pounds can move across the desert floor on their own. They leave trails stretching for hundreds of yards like the footprints of an invisible traveller, puzzling scientists for decades. The cause appears only under rare conditions. When rain leaves a shallow layer of water on the playa, the cold night freezes it into thin ice, and the next morning the ice breaks into large sheets. When wind blows across the surface, those ice sheets drift slowly and push the rocks across the wet mud beneath them, leaving long tracks in the ground. The movement happens very slowly, sometimes only a few yards per minute, making it almost impossible to notice with the naked eye. Would you have enough patience to wait through a cold, windy night, hoping to watch these rocks begin to walk with your own eyes? In the small town of Taos, New Mexico, some residents have spent years hearing a deep humming sound even when everything around them is completely quiet. The sound is often described as a distant diesel engine, yet only about 2% of local residents report being able to hear it. Over the decades, researchers have investigated many possible explanations, including low frequency sound, electromagnetic waves, and differences in human hearing, but none has been fully confirmed. What makes the mystery even stranger is that people living side by side can have completely different experiences, with one person hearing the hum clearly while another hears nothing at all. To this day, the source of the Taos hum remains unknown. Often called the Bermuda Triangle of Europe, Hoya Baciu is a forest famous for a long list of mysterious reports that continue to spark debate today. One of its most striking features is the large number of trees with strangely twisted trunks that bend close to the ground, creating an unusual landscape rarely seen in natural forests. Near the centre of the forest lies an open area known as the clearing, where very little vegetation grows, even though many surveys have found no clear explanation. Over the decades, some visitors have reported hearing unusual sounds, losing their sense of direction, or feeling unexplained discomfort after entering the forest. In 1968, a photograph of an unidentified flying object above Hoya Bashu drew international attention and has remained a subject of debate ever since. Unlike the violent wonders of nature, Golden Rock in Myanmar amazes visitors through an almost unbelievable state of balance. The massive granite boulder is covered with layers of gold leaf, resting near the edge of Mount Kyaiktiyo in Mon State, with a small sacred pagoda built on top. What makes it stand out is that the rock appears to rest on a very narrow part of the stone base below, while nearly half of its body projects on beyond the slope. From a distance, the whole structure looks as if it could roll down at any moment, yet it remains still on the mountaintop at more than 3,600 feet above sea level. For many Buddhist devotees in Myanmar, this balance is tied to the legend of a strand of the Buddha's hair enshrined in the pagoda above. Set in the dry desert of Saudi Arabia, Al Nasla looks as if a modern tool sliced the rock cleanly in two. A straight crack runs through the sandstone body, dividing it into two nearly separate parts, while both halves still stand on small natural stone pedestals. What makes the scene even stranger is how neat the groove appears compared with the wind-worn desert surface around it. Geologists suggest the split may have formed through a natural joint, slight movement beneath the rock, and long-term weathering in the desert environment. Its surface also carries ancient rock carvings, making Al Naslar not only an unusual geological formation, but also a trace of people who once passed through the Tamar region. In Arches National Park, Balanced Rock is a massive stone formation nearly 128 feet tall, rising from the red desert as if it was standing on an impossibly fragile support. The upper boulder is about the size of 3 school buses, but it is not truly floating free because it remains attached to the softer stone pedestal below. Over time, the Dewey Bridge mudstone layer erodes faster under wind, water, and weather, while the harder Entrada sandstone above keeps its heavier shape. This uneven erosion creates the image of a giant rock resting on a stone neck that appears narrower with time. Nearby, other balanced rocks in the park have already collapsed, showing that weathering in Arches is still continuing day by day. Deep in the forest of Rocolati, Aika Chiushitixkegoiti, Kumakivi rests on a smooth, curved rock surface in a position that looks as if it could slide away with the slightest movement. The boulder is about 23 feet long and is estimated to weigh hundreds of tons, yet only about 5 square feet of its surface touches the rock beneath it. What makes it strange is that humans did not place it there, but ancient glaciers are believed to have carried it to this area after the Ice Age. Although it looks unstable, Kumbakiv cannot be moved by human force because its enormous weight is distributed onto a natural point of support. Since 1962, the rock has been protected in Finland as a special natural monument. Have you ever seen two rivers share the same channel but seem to refuse to become one? Near Manos, Encontro das Aguas is where the dark Rio Negro meets the pale brown Rio Solimois, then continues flowing side by side for several miles. The boundary between the two colours is clear because the Rio Negro is warmer, slower, and almost free of sediment, while the Solimois is colder, faster, and loaded with mud from the Andes. These differences in temperature, speed, and density prevent the waters from mixing immediately, creating a sharp, dividing line across the river surface. From a boat, one side looks like dark tea, while the other flows as muddy brown water through the heart of the Amazon. What would happen if a second river appeared beneath the surface of the water? Cenote Angelita in Mexico creates that astonishing illusion with a thick white cloud floating about 100 feet below the surface, making it look like a river flowing underwater. Dead tree trunks rising through the cloud make the scene resemble a mist-covered forest instead of an underwater cavern. In reality, what looks like a river is only a thick white haze suspended between two layers of water, enough to fool even experienced divers. As divers pass through the white layer, the world above almost disappears into the haze. Just a short distance below the surface, Cenote Angelita creates a scene that makes many people feel as though they have entered another world. In the highlands of Ladakh, India, Magnetic Hill makes many people believe a vehicle can roll uphill even with the engine turned off. Sitting more than 13,000 feet above sea level, this road is famous because cars placed at the marked spot slowly move forward without using the accelerator. However, the effect does not come from a mysterious magnetic force, but from an optical illusion created when the surrounding landscape makes a downhill road look like an uphill slope. When measured with equipment, the vehicle is actually rolling downhill under normal gravity, while the human eye has simply been fooled by the scenery. How can an ordinary mountain park disappear beneath a lake in just a few weeks? Every winter, Gruner See in Austria is nothing more than grass, wooden benches, and walking paths. But when snow from the Hochschwab Mountains melts in late spring, the water rises nearly 33 to 40 feet, covering the entire landscape. Even more surprising, the lake stays so clear and emerald green that everything on the bottom looks as if it were seen through open air. Scientists explain that the colour comes from exceptionally pure snowmelt and bright limestone reflecting light, not from algae or chemicals. By autumn, the water has almost completely disappeared, revealing the same park that had been hidden beneath the lake only a few months earlier. Have you ever imagined a place where simply leaning back lets your body float almost effortlessly, even if you cannot swim? Located between Israel, Jordan, and Palestine, the Dead Sea has one of the highest concentrations of salt and minerals in the world, making its water much denser than ordinary seawater. That extremely dense water creates a powerful buoyant force, allowing most people to float easily with very little effort. Its salinity is nearly 10 times higher than the ocean, creating conditions too harsh for fish and most large aquatic life, while salt crystals continue forming ammonia along the shoreline. The feeling of floating almost effortlessly on the surface has made the Dead Sea one of the world's most unusual natural experiences. In the middle of Turkmenistan's dry Karakum Desert, a giant fiery crater has burned continuously for more than half a century, earning the nickname the Door to Hell. According to the most widely repeated account, a drilling collapse in the early 1970s exposed a natural gas pocket, creating a crater about 230 feet across. Hoping to stop the dangerous gas from spreading, workers set it on fire, expecting the flames to burn out quickly, but they never did. After dark, hundreds of small flames burst from gas vents across the crater, bathing the pit in a deep red glow while intense heat spreads across the surrounding desert. To this day, no one knows exactly how much gas remains underground or how much longer the fire will continue to burn. What could make an entire mountain look as if it had been sliced flat by a gigantic blade? Mount Roraima is a tabletop mountain rising about 9,200 feet above sea level, where Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana meet on the same summit. Nearly every side is surrounded by vertical cliffs hundreds of feet high, keeping the summit isolated from the world below for an incredibly long time. Rain falls almost year round, feeding streams, pools, and strange rock formations across its broad flat surface. That isolation allowed many plants and animals to evolve nowhere else on Earth. Thick clouds wrapping around the cliffs often make the summit disappear and reappear like an island floating above the sky. In the deep blue waters of Western Australia, Lake Hillier appears like a bright pink mark placed in the wrong part of the natural map. The lake sits right beside the ocean, yet its water remains bright pink throughout the year instead of blending with the blue sea nearby. Even more unusual, the colour stays visible after the water is collected, making it different from many ordinary optical effects. Scientists believe the pink colour is linked to salt-loving algae and microorganisms, but the exact process behind its unique appearance has not been fully confirmed. White sand and eucalyptus forest surround the lake, making the vivid pink colour stand out even more from above. Today, Lake Hillier remains one of the few lakes in the world that keeps its bright pink colour throughout the year. On the island of Trinidad, Pitch Lake is the world's largest natural asphalt lake, where the surface is not water, but a thick layer of black pitch, covering about 100 acres. In many places, the surface is firm enough for people to walk on, yet beneath it, the asphalt keeps moving as oil and gas slowly rise from deep underground. That constant movement has preserved ancient wood, indigenous artefacts, and even large animal fossils inside the asphalt for thousands of years. Closer to the centre, the surface becomes softer while gas bubbles and the strong smell of oil rise through cracks in the pitch. The lake has been mined for asphalt for more than a century, yet it has never been exhausted. Each year, fresh asphalt slowly rises from below and gradually replaces the material that has been removed. It is hard to believe that beneath Vietnam's limestone mountains there is a space large enough to create its own ecosystem. Son Doong is the largest natural cave in the world by volume, with about 38.5 million cubic metres of space hidden deep inside limestone mountains. Inside the cave, collapsed ceilings form giant skylights, allowing sunlight to fall in and support patches of forest growing dozens of feet below the surface. To go deeper, explorers must cross jungle, underground rivers, and a massive calcite wall known as the Great Wall of Vietnam. Inside the cave, clouds and mist can also form like a miniature weather system when cold air underground meets warm air flowing in through the skylights. Deep in the forests of Peling Island, Indonesia, Pai Sepok Lake is famous for water so clear that boats seem to float in mid-air. Underground spring water filtered through layers of rock, and the very low amount of sediment helped the lake remain exceptionally clear throughout the year. As a result, rocks, fallen trees, and the lake floor can still be seen even at depths of dozens of feet. The water also changes from turquoise to deep blue, depending on the sunlight, depth, and time of day, creating different visual effects across the surface. Whether viewed from the shore or from a boat, the boundary between the water and the lake bed almost disappears. This remarkable optical effect is what has made Pisopok Lake one of Indonesia's clearest lakes. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, Shanay Tumpishka is so hot that touching it for only a few seconds can cause severe burns. Many sections reach nearly 212 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to boil an egg and kill small creatures that accidentally fall into this river, stretching more than 4 miles. What seems almost impossible is that it lies hundreds of miles from any active volcano, making its heat source a major question for scientists. The explanation is that rainwater seeps deep through geological faults, heats underground, and then rises back into the rainforest. For local indigenous communities, the river is tied to Yakumama, a giant serpent spirit believed to guard this boiling water. In the darkness of Vieques Island, Puerto Rico, the entire bay suddenly glows bright blue as if the ocean were being lit from within. Mosquito Bay is the brightest bioluminescent bay in the world, where every paddle stroke, hand movement, or passing fish leaves glowing blue trails across the water. The unbelievable part is that all of this light comes from countless microscopic organisms too small to be seen with the naked eye. Even small changes in salinity, temperature, or pollution can quickly reduce this extraordinary display. When the entire bay lights up beneath the night sky, it looks less like Earth and more like another world. How can a waterfall plunge into the ocean when no water is actually falling? Off the coast of Le Morne in Mauritius, the underwater waterfall creates the illusion of the entire ocean pouring into a giant abyss when viewed from above. In reality, ocean currents continuously pull sand and sediment from the shallow shelf over the edge of the underwater plateau, forming streaks that look exactly like falling water. The effect becomes even more dramatic because the seabed suddenly drops from about 500 feet to more than 13,000 feet, changing the water from bright turquoise to deep blue. From the shoreline, the illusion is almost impossible to notice, but from a helicopter or airplane, the sea appears to vanish into a massive underwater waterfall. Have you ever seen a place that looks like a desert, yet creates thousands of blue lagoons between white dunes every year? Lençois maranhenses in Brazil looks dry from above, but it actually receives heavy rainfall, making it very different from a true desert. After the rainy season, water becomes trapped between the dunes by an underground layer that prevents it from draining away, forming clear lagoons scattered across the white sand. When the dry season arrives, most of the lagoons slowly disappear, changing the entire landscape within just a few months. Even stranger, many fish appear when the water returns because their eggs can survive in the dry mud through the dry seasons. And this remarkable cycle repeats year after year, creating one of the strangest landscapes on Earth. Can you believe a beautiful beach in California was once created from human trash? Glass Beach in Fort Bragg began as a place where residents threw bottles, household items, and even old cars over the coastal cliffs for arcades. After the dump was closed in 1967, larger debris was gradually removed, while broken glass continued to be crushed, rolled, and rounded by the waves. Over time, dangerous trash became smooth sea glass, covering the shore like a layer of colourful pebbles. Their colours still reveal their old origins, from amber brown beer bottles and green soda bottles to rare red pieces that may have come from old car taillights. Under a microscope, sea glass also carries tiny C-shaped cracks formed as seawater slowly changed the surface over many years. In the frozen continent of Antarctica, the McMurdo Dry Valleys are a barren landscape surrounded by ice, yet they rank among the driest places on Earth. Covering about 1,850 square miles, snow rarely remains because katabatic winds exceeding 200 miles per hour constantly sweep away ice and moisture. Even more remarkably, this landscape has changed very little for about 2 million years, leaving behind dry, rocky valleys surrounded by endless ice. Yet beneath the permanent ice lie hypersaline lakes where microorganisms continue to survive in near complete isolation. These extreme conditions have made McMurdo one of the closest places on Earth to the surface of Mars. On the shore of the Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia, Balancing Rock is a basalt column about 30 feet tall, standing near the sea's edge, as if one strong gust could push it into the water. This rock formed from ancient lava flows about 200 million years ago, when hot rock cooled and contracted into basalt columns with almost even sides. What makes it striking is that its base touches the cliff below through a very small support point, while the rest appears to hang over the water. Around it, many other basalt columns have been broken down over time by tides, waves, and coastal erosion. Although it stands near one of the strongest tidal areas in the world, Balancing Rock remains upright like a strange marker of coastal geology. At first glance, you might think these scenes were created with AI-generated effects. But no, this is China, where the invisible hand of nature has sculpted mountains and rocks into some of the most impossible-looking masterpieces in the real world. Some resemble gigantic parts of the human body. Others take the shapes of animals, so strange that people in China have given them spiritual meanings in an attempt to explain their existence. Across this vast land, nature has left behind countless wonders that become harder to believe the longer you look at them. Standing before these extraordinary formations, we begin to realize that nature can create shapes far beyond the limits of human imagination. Where the ground has been torn into tens of thousands of glowing earth towers, the Yuanmu Earth Forest resembles the ruins of an ancient kingdom turned into mud. The pillars and pointed towers can rise to about 130 feet, with surfaces coloured gold, brick red or dark brown, and covered in wrinkles and deep vertical grooves. The mystery lies in the material itself, because soil is normally soft and unstable, yet here it stands like fossilised stone for millions of years. From a distance, the crowded towers resemble an abandoned medieval city, filled with jagged walls and sharp forms. The site is also linked to the discovery of the first early human fossil in Asia, making every passage feel connected to the beginning of human history. At sunset, the light spreads across the entire Earth forest and turns the towers into a vast golden landscape. Without any sculptor, nature shaped a gigantic stone turtle on the summit of Guifeng, carrying geological traces formed over millions of years. Located in Shangrao, Jiangxi province, the formation resembles a turtle stretching its neck forward, with a rough upper section like a shell and a deeply eroded lower section forming the raised head. This shape developed because different parts of the rock eroded at different speeds, gradually giving the stone the appearance of a living creature. In East Asian culture, the turtle is one of the 4 sacred creatures and represents longevity and stability, so local people regard the divine turtle as a sign of sacred land. Rising through a sea of clouds in Jiangxi province, Mount Sanqing appears separated from the rest of Earth. Hundreds of tall, narrow granite pillars stand closely together in the mist, and many have bases that seem unbelievably thin. The most striking is Python, emerging from the mountain, a formation about 420 feet high that resembles a giant snake rising from the valley. Geologists believe these pillars began forming about 200 million years ago through powerful movements of Earth's crust. But why have storms and earthquakes failed to break them after millions of years? Science points to the strength of granite and natural balance, while many people still believe an unseen force is holding them upright. In the mountains of Guizhou, Shuangru Peaks, stand out as two rounded hills with nearly identical shapes, creating a rare natural sight. The hills are made of ancient limestone shaped over millions of years by rainwater and erosion. Softer rock slowly dissolved, while harder sections remained and formed two hills rising side by side. Although the process is understood, their similar size and outlines still make many people feel as if they were carefully arranged. The area has 3 viewing points called 20 years, 40 years and 60 years, where the peaks appear different from each distance. During festivals, many couples visit the foot of the hills to pray for children, while construction on the slopes and summits is restricted to preserve the landscape. The mystery of the Gushang Redstone Forest lies in a stone maze that seems to change colour like it is bleeding while preserving traces from 450 million years ago. Located in the Shaanxi Autonomous Prefecture of Hunan Province, the forest contains rock walls arranged in rolling layers that resemble enormous ribbons turned into stone. Under strong sunlight, the rocks glow bright red. Beneath cloudy skies, they shift toward purple-brown. And during rain, the entire surface darkens into a deep black. This transformation once led local people to believe that the red colour came from the blood of warriors who had fallen in the past. The rock walls also contain numerous fossils of trilobites, nautiluses and other primitive marine creatures. Touching these wave-shaped layers therefore means touching the remains of an ancient ocean that disappeared hundreds of millions of years ago. Beside a deep cliff, a massive rock weighing dozens of tons balances on an unbelievably narrow base, as if it had just fallen from the clouds. This is Flying Over Rock, a famous wonder of Huangshan, where a granite block more than 40 feet tall rises above the sea of clouds. According to legend, it is a leftover stone from when the goddess Nua repaired the sky, and it also appeared in the opening scene of the 1987 series Dream of the Red Chamber. In reality, wind, rain and frost gradually eroded the softer surrounding rock, leaving only the solid central block standing beside the cliff. If you saw it with your own eyes, would you believe it was a masterpiece of nature or a fragment of an ancient legend? Mount Fanjing is the highest Buddhist peak in the Wuling Mountains and stands apart from the surrounding landscape as an ancient isolated mountain. Unlike the nearby limestone terrain, it is made from rock more than 1 billion years old, giving it a unique shape that has survived through time. Its most famous landmark is the Red Cloud Golden Summit, where a rock pillar nearly 330 feet tall is split into 2 peaks, each supporting a small temple. The 2 summits are connected only by a narrow stone bridge, while the entire rock formation stands high above the clouds and strong winds. To reach the top, visitors climb nearly 8,888 steep stone steps while holding onto iron chains. Early mornings often bring red clouds and a sea of mist, making the mountain both a famous pilgrimage site and a spectacular viewpoint. Mongolian people call the Hexington granite stone forest the towering fortress, where some of the hardest rocks on Earth appear to have been split apart by an invisible force across the grassland. The granite is extremely dense and resistant to erosion. Yet instead of rising vertically, the formations crack horizontally and stack in layers like old books. This structure begins when water enters tiny fractures inside the original granite. As temperatures fall dozens of degrees below freezing, the water turns to ice, expands, and repeatedly pushes from within until the rock slowly separates over time. Local legends describe the site as the remains of Genghis Khan's camp or as stone barriers placed by gods to block the wind. Walking through the narrow passages on a windy afternoon, visitors can hear long whistles through the cracks and touch horizontal folds so regular that they seem shaped by human hands. One of the most unusual geological wonders of Huangshan, monkey watching the sea reaches toward the edge of a cliff as if quietly waiting above a sea of clouds. The massive rock naturally resembles a monkey sitting with its arms folded across its chest while calmly looking down into the valley, making it hard to believe it was shaped entirely by nature. The boulder stands alone on a narrow rock ledge beside a sheer drop, giving the impression that a single strong gust could send it falling. Yet after thousands of years of enduring powerful storms on the peaks of Huangshan, it has remained perfectly balanced and still stands firmly today. How long has she been standing there? 100 years, 1,000 years, or since the first promise had barely begun to fade? From a certain angle, the rocky peak takes the complete shape of a motionless woman gazing toward the distant horizon, earning the name Schifrin Peak. That remarkably human form was created over millions of years as wind and water slowly eroded the rock, revealing curves that resemble the human body. Yet what makes the place even more haunting is the legend of a wife who waited endlessly for a husband and eventually turned to stone. Similar stories surround many peaks, named Lady across China, turning this natural formation into a symbol of loyalty that has endured through time. Gravity should have pulled this rock down hundreds of years ago, yet it still stands proudly against every gust of wind. Mushroom rock in the mountains of Chongqing has a cap several feet wide resting on an extremely narrow base, creating an almost impossible sense of imbalance. In reality, its shape was formed by differential erosion, as wind and water wore away the softer, lower rock faster than the harder layer above. Today, the formation remains a striking natural wonder and an important site for scientists studying weathering across the region. If you are looking for a place that resembles the surface of a dead planet, Gao Yiling is one of the strangest landscapes you can visit. Instead of forests or sharp mountain peaks, the area is covered with long red ridges that resemble the backs of giant dragons, with rock surfaces that appear unusually smooth. Why do these rocks remain almost free of moss and dense vegetation despite the region's humid climate? Geologists believe the landforms were shaped over millions of years by erosion, but the reason their surfaces stay so smooth is still being studied. Narrow paths stretching across the ridges make the landscape feel even more unusual and challenging to cross. Its barren and unusual appearance has led local people to believe that this land was once left behind by the gods. Mount Jianglang looks as if 3 giant slabs of stone were driven straight into the ground in the middle of a vast plain. From a distance, the 3 red sandstone peaks stand so perfectly side by side that they resemble enormous brushstrokes painted across the sky. Geologists believe they are the hardest remains of an ancient rock formation, yet many people are still amazed that these towering pillars have survived millions of years of storms and earthquakes. Deep inside the mountain is a narrow crack where the cliffs rise so close together that the sky above becomes only a thin line of light. Ancient pine trees continue growing from tiny openings in the nearly vertical cliffs, clinging to the rock century after century. The only way to reach the summit is by climbing thousands of steep stone steps carved directly into the mountainside. Across the dry landscape of Gansu, Yanji Mountain stands out with deep red slopes that look as though they have been painted across the hillsides. What caused such an intense colour to become concentrated in only one place? Geologists believe the mountain's colour comes from iron ore and other minerals that accumulated over millions of years. Even so, Yanji Mountain remains unusual because its red mineral layer became pure enough to be used as natural pigment long ago. This remarkable concentration of minerals continues to draw scientific interest as researchers study the geological processes that form the mountain. Today, Yanji Mountain remains one of the most striking naturally coloured landscapes ever recorded in China. Could an entire forest exist without a single tree? The stone forest of Yunnan is made up of thousands of limestone pillars, rising dozens of feet into the air, creating a landscape unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. Few people realise this area once lay beneath an ancient sea before it was lifted above the surface, hundreds of millions of years ago. Over millions of years, rain and wind slowly wore away the softer rock, leaving only the hardest pillars standing across the valley. Yet the mystery continues because a vast network of caves and underground rivers still lies beneath the stone forest, much of it remaining unexplored. That is why this former seafloor continues to draw geologists searching for answers about how such an extraordinary landscape was created. Deep in the Gobi Desert, the ghost city is known for howling winds that echo through the night, leading many people to believe spirits remain trapped in the sands. Across the barren land, thousands of clay formations stand in parallel rows like a giant fleet of ships. Local legends say the area was once a wealthy kingdom, buried by sandstorms as punishment from the gods. Geologists believe that about 700,000 years ago the region was the floor of a large freshwater lake. After the lake dried up, wind and sand slowly carved the sediments into the strange maze seen today. In some areas, compasses may work inaccurately, so visitors must stay on marked paths and avoid leaving designated safe zones. Two enormous stone sails rise from the sea at Dongshan like a mysterious ship that has remained anchored for tens of thousands of years. The two granite pillars stand side by side, with one reaching about 108 feet and the other about 56 feet. Creating the unmistakable shape of giant sails catching the ocean wind. And according to local legend, the formation is a sea turtle that turned to stone after failing to obtain a sacred Lingji herb. Geologists explain that waves, sea winds, and tides gradually wore away the softer surrounding rock over an extremely long period. That process left only the hardest granite core behind, allowing the twin stone pillars to rise above the sea like a ship still sailing with its sails raised. Despite standing in an area of powerful waves, strong winds, and large tidal changes, the two stone sails have remained firmly upright without collapsing. Dongshan wind-moving stone-in Fujian is a gigantic 200-ton boulder that touches the ground at only one tiny point, yet remains upright against gravity. The granite block is completely detached and balances on a narrow, sloping rock base, with a contact area of only a few dozen square inches, like a giant standing on one toe. When wind passes or someone pushes at the right spot, the stone moves slightly within a very small range before returning to its original balance point. What makes it remarkable is that it has not fallen despite countless powerful storms arriving from the Pacific Ocean. During the earthquake near Dongshan Island in 1918, many houses collapsed while the boulder remained in place. Even today, the reason this massive stone can preserve such an unusual state of balance has not been fully explained. Shijin Cave lies deep beneath the Gishu Plateau, a universe that has remained frozen underground for millions of years. Its largest chamber is spacious enough to hold the Statue of Liberty with room left over, while the entire system contains more than 176 million cubic feet and extends for about 4.1 miles. Inside are 58 vast areas resembling underground palaces surrounded by deep lakes and hidden rivers flowing through the darkness. Its most unusual feature is the silver rain tree, a transparent stalactite formation standing about 56 feet high and shining like crystal inside the cave. Its mineral layers formed over extremely long periods, preserving traces of past changes in temperature and rainfall. Zhaijin is not only called the king of Chinese caves, but is also regarded as an underground archive of Earth's ancient climate. More than 20,000 cone-shaped mountains rise directly from flat ground, making one Fenglin in Guizhou look like a giant sea of waves turned into stone. The mountains do not form long connected ranges but stand separately and crowd together with nearly identical shapes, creating a limestone maze that stretches toward the horizon. This region once lay beneath the sea before movements in the Earth's crust lifted it upward, allowing rainwater to dissolve and cut deeply into the limestone. The strange part is that this process required an enormous amount of water, yet almost no large rivers can be seen across the surface today. The water flowed through cracks in the rock, hollowing out the ground and creating caves, underground rivers and sinkholes beneath the mountains. This means the solid ground beneath visitors is actually the roof of an enormous hidden world below. In the peaceful countryside of Chongqing, Daoyu Rock rises like a natural wonder that leaves almost everyone staring in disbelief. Weighing dozens of tons, the sandstone formation has a broad upper section that appears ready to collapse, yet its entire mass rests on an extremely narrow base. Despite that fragile appearance, the rock has remained standing for centuries, creating a shape that challenges common sense. Common sense, geologically, it formed over thousands of years as rainwater and temperature changes eroded the sandstone unevenly. Local residents believe it is the remains of a divine buffalo that was subdued, with the narrow base resembling a rope tightened around its neck. A small hollow in the rock also holds a sacred statue, turning the site into a cultural and spiritual symbol of the region. Could the Monkey King have once been imprisoned in this very place? At Chaya Mountain in Henan Province, a massive granite formation splits into 5 giant fingers reaching from the mountainside like a divine hand descending from the heavens. Many believe this strange landscape inspired Wu Chengen to write the scene in Journey to the West, where the Buddha transformed 5 fingers into a mountain and imprisoned the great sage for 500 years. Geologically, granite masses here were uplifted and weathered over thousands of years, gradually forming the unusual stone peaks seen today. Standing before this stone hand, the boundary between science and legend suddenly feels remarkably thin. Wulingyuan is home to more than 3,000 giant stone pillars rising across the valleys, and it helped inspire the floating mountains in Avatar. Many sandstone columns reach about 650 feet high and stand apart like enormous pencils planted into the ground. They formed from rock about 380 million years old, then were divided by rainwater and natural cracks over tens of millions of years. Softer rock slowly wore away, while harder sections remained as tall, narrow pillars. In Tujia culture, the area is also seen as a heavenly place where spirits once lived. Today, morning clouds and glass bridges across the canyons make Wulingyuan one of the famous landscapes recognized by UNESCO. Changbai Mountain is not just a dormant volcano, but a place where the line between reality and legend seems to disappear. Here, near its snow-covered summit, lies Heaven Lake, a crater lake more than 6,500 feet above sea level, and almost always hidden beneath thick mist. Many visitors claim to see a mysterious creature beneath its surface, even though no scientific evidence has confirmed the stories. Geologically, the lake fills a giant volcanic crater created by an enormous eruption about 1,000 years ago, one of the largest ever recorded in history. Changbai Mountain also forms the natural border between China and North Korea and is regarded as sacred by both countries. Reaching the lake requires crossing several climate zones before arriving at one of the region's most mysterious landscapes. Haidashan is a black mountain standing alone across a pale golden plateau, looking like a piece of land separated from another world. Its dark colour comes from basalt rich in iron and magnesium, formed long ago through volcanic activity. Over millions of years in an extremely dry climate, the rock surface slowly changed and developed a shiny black crust that looks almost painted. The contrast between the dark mountain and the bright land around it makes the sight resemble a giant ink stain across the desert. Local people call it the Lonely Mountains because it stands completely apart from the other ranges in the region. With no clear land connection to the surrounding mountains, the exact origin of erosion is still debated. The Flaming Mountains are considered the hottest place in China during summer, with rock surfaces reaching temperatures of about 158 to 176 degrees Fahrenheit. A basin-shaped landscape traps hot air, while the exposed red sandstone absorbs sunlight throughout the day, causing temperatures to keep rising. Although several factors have been identified, scientists continue studying why some areas become even hotter than other places with similar conditions. At the centre of the site stands a giant thermometer about 39 feet tall, where visitors gather to watch temperatures climb far above normal levels. Many visitors even place eggs on the hot rocks to experience the extreme heat of one of the harshest landscapes in China. Jade Dragon Snow Mountain is one of the very few places in the Northern Hemisphere where glaciers still survive close to the subtropics. What has allowed ice to remain here, while many places with similar climates have already lost theirs? The range has 13 connected peaks, with the highest reaching 18,360 feet, creating conditions where snow and ice can survive throughout the year. Meltwater flows through mineral-rich rock, giving nearby lakes and streams their striking turquoise colour. This water continues feeding rivers and surrounding ecosystems below. Meanwhile, the highest summit of Jade Dragon Snow Mountain has never been successfully climbed. Mount Kailash is the only sacred mountain in the world that has never been climbed, not because of technical difficulty, but because of the deep respect shown by several major religions. Rising about 21,778 feet, it is known for its four nearly symmetrical faces and sharp peak, giving it the appearance of a giant pyramid. Four major rivers of Asia, the Indus, Brahmaputra, Sutlej, and Karnali, all begin their journeys from the region surrounding the mountain. In Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Burn, Kailash is regarded as a sacred mountain and the spiritual center of the world. Many pilgrims have also claimed that their hair and fingernails grew unusually fast, while staying near the mountain. To this day, there is no confirmed scientific evidence explaining those reports. In the middle of the Gobi Desert, a giant fleet of Earth rises from bright blue water, creating a scene that looks like a mirage across the dry landscape. These Yardang formations were shaped on desert ground, yet they now stand quietly in the lake like abandoned ships. Scientists believe flash floods from the Kunlun Mountains changed the natural flow of water and flooded the area around the formations. Minerals dissolved in the water give the lake its striking blue colour, making the desert resemble an inland sea. Yet water, wind, and sand are still wearing away the formations every day. As the landscape continues to change, researchers keep watching to see how much longer this unusual fleet will survive. Shaozhai Tiankeng in Chongqing is a gigantic sinkhole large enough to swallow the Eiffel Tower, yet its bottom hides a primeval forest, seemingly forgotten by time. It is the largest natural sinkhole in the world, formed in limestone with two stacked levels shaped like a double bottom bowl, reaching a combined depth of more than 2,000 feet. The structure is unusual because the rock collapsed in separate stages, creating two distinct terraces instead of a chaotic field of debris. Its long isolation has supported a separate ecosystem containing plants and animals with ancient characteristics not previously known on the surface. Beneath the forest lies an extensive cave network that humans have still not fully explored. Reaching the bottom requires descending more than 2,800 steps built directly along the sheer rock walls. Earth appears to have been torn open by a gigantic claw, leaving the deadly scar known as Dushanzi across the silent plains of Xinjiang. Both sides of the ravine are covered with millions of vertical, parallel, and sharply pointed grooves that resemble a forest of dark mud blades, surrounded by grey terrain almost entirely without life. From a distance, the grassland remains completely flat, offering no visible warning that a deep chasm lies directly ahead. The break appears so suddenly that the ground seems to open its mouth and swallow everything above it. Science explains the formation through water erosion, yet its enormous scale and razor-sharp shape create a striking visual contradiction on such soft ground. The most puzzling feature is how this steep mass of mud and gravel has not completely collapsed or slid into the ravine. Who carved the mountain into suspended crystal pools? No one. Because Baishuitai is an extraordinary limestone masterpiece that continues to grow by itself. Located about 7,800 feet above sea level in Shangri-La, Yunnan, it resembles snow-white rice terraces with smooth surfaces curving into rims filled with clear blue spring water. The water is rich in calcium carbonate, yet instead of leaving chaotic deposits, it continuously builds semicircular barriers stacked in orderly layers. Over roughly 200,000 to 300,000 years, tiny limestone particles carried by each drop of water have expanded the formation across nearly 3 square miles. In that sense, the mountain is still growing every day from the water flowing across its surface. For the Naxi people, the site is also sacred and is believed to have been created by the gods to teach humans how to farm on steep mountain slopes. Across the green grasslands of Inner Mongolia, the Woolen-Hada volcanic complex appears like a fragment of Mars dropped onto an endlessly flat landscape. Dark black Deep red and dry pumice formations contrast sharply with the soft grass around them, making the entire terrain resemble a spatial rupture on the surface of Earth. Some volcanic cones resemble an overturned bagger furnace, while earlier pumice mining cut away part of one mountain slope. That accidental cut exposed a clear cross-section, allowing visitors to see the internal structure of the volcano directly. Because of the isolated scenery, travelers often wear astronaut suits to recreate the feeling of landing on Mars. In local nomadic culture, these dark volcanic forms are also called the Black Tears of the Grassland, linking the harsh landscape with generations of life across the open steppe. Dongchuan is considered one of the most striking red landscapes in the world, where a natural chemical reaction lasting millions of years has coloured the mountain slopes near Kunming. The soil contains high levels of iron and aluminum, so long exposure to air and harsh weather cause the iron minerals to oxidize and produce its distinctive red colour. Across this surface, local farmers rotate different crops, creating green, yellow and white fields that spread like a vast colour palette. Ploughed lines and field boundaries divide the slopes into clear geometric blocks, turning the landscape into a joint creation of nature and human cultivation. Although it lies more than 6,500 feet above sea level and covers a broad area, Dongchuan remained almost unknown on the global travel map. Only in the mid-1990s did photographs taken by a passing photographer introduce this red landscape to the wider world.